Good afternoon. Welcome to the Kongres 590 studio. We are here in this fantastic location, historic Warsaw racetrack. As you know, this is the 8th edition of the Kongres 590, and it attracts a lot of prominent guests, lots of speakers, lots of panelists. They all come here to Warsaw to discuss, to share their ideas, their opinions. And I'm very pleased and very happy to host here a very distinguished guest, General Sir Richard Shirreff, Managing Partner, Strategy Worldwide Limited, former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, author of the book War with Russia. Sir, it's my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sir, I guess you know what topics we're going to discuss. I've heard your fantastic speech. Congratulations. It was really very enlightening. And I would like to ask you, what scenarios for Ukraine war for the upcoming months seem most likely to you today? And how long do you figure this conflict will last?
I think a range of scenarios. Best case, Ukraine launches a counteroffensive and achieves total victory in a short time. I don't think that's going to happen. I think most likely is that what we're seeing in Ukraine now is the start of a campaign which is going to require a series of counteroffensives, which, providing NATO, the West, and Ukraine's partners give Ukraine what it needs, will allow Ukraine to achieve all its military goals. But I think we're talking maybe 2 years, maybe longer for that. I think we have to be prepared for a long, long fight. And the worst case, of course, is that Ukraine is unable to dislodge Russia from Ukrainian territory. I don't think Ukraine will allow Russia to take more territory, but the worst case is a long-running stalemate, which leaves Putin in occupying a significant amount of Ukrainian territory and allows him to declare a victory. In terms of time, I think we have to accept that even in the most likely case, this is going to be another 2 years of hard fighting. Think Italy, 1943 to 1945, in which the Poles played such a glorious part, the Allied campaign against the Nazis. And even when the guns fall silent, assume Ukraine achieves victory. Assume there is some sort of armistice which Putin has to accept because he knows he's been defeated. Then we're into a state of long-running confrontation with Russia, because Russia will never give up its desire to rebuild a second Russian empire, to subjugate Ukraine, and to threaten Europe. So we have to accept this is a generational challenge.
Thank you for that. And I just wonder, sir, on 11th and 12th of June, NATO will have another summit in Vilnius. What sort of resolutions can we expect from this meeting?
This summit, 11th, 12th July, is really important for NATO. It's got to be more than rhetoric. In the wake of the Kakhovka Dam environmental atrocity, act of terrorism, which it was, NATO has got to be really strong. As a very senior Ukrainian intelligence official, the head of their foreign intelligence service, said to me and a group of others in Kiev about a month ago, there's only one way to deal with Russia: hit it in the face and then talk. Any sign of weakness will allow Russia to continue. NATO firstly has got to give Ukraine the means to do the job, and it's got to do so in a strategic sense. At the moment, it's done bilaterally. Individual nations, one-to-one with Ukraine, may be coordinated, but it's not an alliance strategy. There needs to be an alliance strategy that says very clearly this is what the end state is, and these are the means and capabilities required to achieve that end state, coordinated. I think NATO has got to give Ukraine the means to really hurt Russia in the wake of that Kakhovka Dam atrocity. Target the Kerch Bridge, target the Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol Harbor. Make Russia realize that if it takes action like that, there will be painful consequences. If it doesn't do that, who knows what comes next? An attack on the Zaporizhzhia power plant.
Could be.
A nuclear catastrophe. And perhaps that sets a condition for the release of a tactical nuclear weapon. So that's the first thing. Second thing, there must be a clear and resounding declaration of support for all Ukraine's military objectives, all President Zelensky's 10 points. And then the final point, the really strategic issue, is a clear sign, a roadmap to rapid NATO membership for Ukraine. Ideally, the target should be the Washington Conference in 2024, NATO's summit conference, which is the 75th anniversary of the foundation of NATO.
That early, you think?
I think so, because also, clearly, that also presupposes that NATO gives the means to Ukraine to achieve military victory. And if it did it in time, well, who knows, that could be a possibility. But you've got to aim high. You never get everything perfect, but aim high would be my motto.
Absolutely. Will providing F-16 fighter jets help and change current counter-offensive? Would you say that it's a game changer?
Well, it will be when they come, as it would have been with tanks when they came. And it would have been a game changer if the West, if NATO, had given Ukraine the capabilities it needed right from the start on the 24th of February. I mean, I think of Poland looking to give MiG-29s to Ukraine.
We were the first one
early,
to do it.
But dissuaded by America. We've got to be really careful here about the dangers of self-deterring and being frightened to give Ukraine the capabilities. Again, that shows weakness, and I go back to my earlier points of the need to show real strength and determination with Russia. So F-16s, yes, they will be a game changer. But we've got to turn on the tap. And too often, this has been a dribbling of capability instead of concentration of effort, which has been needed from the start. We saw it with tanks, and we're seeing it with aircraft. I mean, I am very proud. I'm very critical of my own Ministry of Defence and the British government for drawing down the size of the armed forces. But I am proud that Britain has taken a lead here, first in with handheld anti-tank weapons right at the start, first in with tanks, first in with long-range cruise missiles. I think other nations should follow suit, particularly across the pond in America.
But sir, aren't you afraid that if Putin gets cornered with F-16, let's say, he might push the button?
No, I'm not. I think, again, show strength to Russia, they back off. Give them a chance and say, oh, we're worried about nuclear weapons. What has been the consequence? Every week there's been nuclear saber rattling. And it goes back to my point about making Russia feel the pain of the consequences of what it's done, and we haven't begun to do that yet.
So you're the guy in the know, I guess, and you know a lot of things. So I wonder, in your opinion, who's the most serious contender for the new job of the NATO Secretary General?
I'm not in the know about that, Roman. I mean, I'm not a NATO insider, and frankly, you know, anybody's guess. I mean, anybody's guess. I think it is high time, if I may say so, that we had a NATO Secretary General from what I call a frontier state. Poland, the Baltic states. I mean, you might have observed that in my book, my NATO Secretary General was a Pole.
Thank you.
Enough said.
How did the war change Europe's sense of security, in your opinion?
Well, I think what it has done is reinforce all the concerns that I and others had. You know, arguably, we said it was going to happen. What it has done in terms of security, it continues to worry me that the penny has not dropped across NATO as a whole. That this is a war not just against Ukraine, it's a war against the West, it's a war against NATO, it's a war against Ukraine joining the West. And that means there has got to be a fundamental mindset shift right across the alliance that says the worst case we have to prepare for is war with Russia. And that will play into every aspect of our lives. And that's a tough call and will require sacrifices. It will require less spending on social welfare or education or health, and more spending, serious spending on defense. But at the end of the day, the most important duty of government is protection of the state. And that's something that all NATO nations have got to take on board.
So how serious a threat has Russia become to Europe, and in particular to Poland, in your opinion?
Russia is a real and existential threat to Europe, and will continue to be a real and existential threat to Europe, unless, and I go back to my earlier point, NATO, the one shield is NATO. And NATO is going to have to establish a band of deterrent steel around Eastern Europe, to include Ukraine, I would say also to include Moldova and Georgia, the post-Soviet republics, to demonstrate unequivocally that if Russia decided at any stage to to try it on in the future, the consequences will be really painful. But this again, I go back to my point that you can only preserve peace by showing security and being prepared for the worst case war.
What's your take on the current Polish involvement in helping Ukraine?
I think Poland has been right out there up front as a leader, right from the start. I mean, I think there are two aspects here. First and foremost, it's the military capability. We've seen Poland has been right on the front foot and a leader, which has been great. I would say also that Poland is demonstrating that it understands the threats by the investment in its armed forces. And I think the final area is perhaps a more sort of philosophical one, but it's nevertheless important, which is that Poland, somebody of my generation, and I guess yours,
yes,
remembers with admiration and in a huge pride the way Poland raised the flag of liberty with Solidarność in the darkest days of the Soviet Union and of the Warsaw Pact. And it was that flag and that burning desire for freedom, liberty, rule of law, democracy, which began to undermine the Soviet Union. And at the end of the day, it is democracies coming. There can be no greater strength than democracies coming together. So Poland carries the flag for all those NATO core values of the rule of law and liberty and democracy as well.
Sir, so many topics to discuss, but we're running out of time. So Richard Shirreff, thank you much for sharing your wisdom with us, and hope to see you again in Poland and talk to our viewers.
I'd love to come
My
back.
pleasure.
Dziękuję. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we are on the internet, live stream. Please watch us. Tomorrow is another day when the Kongres 590 continues, and we are here at the racetrack. So you're welcome here to enjoy our guests and what they have to say. Thank you.